Welcome everyone to this third session of our practical tour on how to integrate non-financial value for better decision making in your organization. Before we start, allow me to give you some housekeeping rules. So do note that the webinar is being recorded. We will have a Q&A session after question session and then after Thomas session. So we will have 2 Q&A sessions. If you have any technical issue, please use the chat and we will share with you presentation and recording after the session. So in September, last September, we launched the trajectory with a lot of insight on the why it is important to get on board. Thinking about the non-financial impact you create as an organization will help you to mitigate risk, but also allow you to grasp new business opportunity. And then last October, in collaboration with 2 of our members, Sustainalyze and PwC, we determined the focus in measurements and to set your ambition. And today we will focus more on the how to measure. And today we have the great pleasure to welcome Christian Heller. So Christian is the CEO of the Value Balancing Alliance. He will give us an overview of the measuring field landscape, shed some light on the EU Green Deal requirements, and share his advice and explain what the Value Balancing Alliance is doing and what is unique about this methodology. Then we will have a short Q&A session, and then Thomas Biermeier from SAP will explain how SAP starts its journey to move to the value balancing method, which challenge he had to overcome and what he added value for the organization is. So Christian, I'll let you, yeah, that's the 2 speakers. I'll let you start.
Unmuted. Many thanks. Many thanks for the introduction and for the opportunity today to present in the end the work what the VBA is doing and also to shed some lights on the setup we have. And I think most importantly to have also a look what is currently going on with regards to the standardization of sustainability reporting and accounting, be it on the EU level, be it on the international level. So any kinds of questions you might have in this direction, happy to answer them as well, because we are involved in these processes, as you will see throughout the presentation. So first of all, we are all aware, at least the people here in the group, that the business environment has fundamentally changed over the last years. As one of the key impacts or outcomes of this development is that steering a company along profits is not sufficient anymore. So most of the companies driven from, let's say, internal engagements from the financial market, from politics, from standards such as regulators, or from the broader public, just think about the Greta Thunberg movement, are now bringing up additional KPI next to the classical financial KPI to steer their businesses. The key challenge what we face as companies as of today is we were just used for over 2000 years just to steer ourselves along profits, profits, and profits. And if you now set on the same level KPIs such as biodiversity, climate change, employee engagement, social commitments, whatever, you come for the first time into trade-offs in decision-making as a company. And as of today, we are lacking the methodologies to assess and collect the right data, to provide the right information to our decision makers within the company. And also we are lacking in the end clear frameworks how we should disclose these data to the broader public when we're talking about reporting. So the VBA, or Value Balancing Alliance, in short VBA, we are a non-for-profit organization which is based in Germany. We have been founded in June 2019, and the VBA is building in the end on the resource contribution of its member companies. This is including an annual budget. This is also including for the core members, as for example, SAP, providing manpower for the VBA in the end to get the work done, what we are doing here. We as VBA are consulted on a pro bono basis by the 4 large service networks, Deloitte, EY, KPMG, PwC. We receive funding from the EU Commission, which is the LIFE program, which is related to climate change and environmental aspects within the EU Commission. And we are running larger collaborations, let's say, with the usual suspects in the area of sustainability and accounting, but also with international organizations. And I'm going a little bit more into the details throughout this presentation. As you can see with regard to the memberships, it's an international group which is covering various sectors, currently with regard to the locations mainly in Europe. So, and this goes also back to the drive what we see from the EU Commission in this direction. You should also be aware that the VBA itself has set an end date. So everything what we are doing should be finalized by the end of 2023. And all outcomes what we have achieved until this point in time will be provided by the public without any commercial interest. And we are in discussion with several institutions and organizations who is going to pick up our work and is driving this forward. Just with regards to, let's say, key milestones, just to introduce this a little bit. So we were founded in June 2019. In the beginning of 2020, we received a mandate by the EU Commission, which is called Transparent. It's a public-private partnership together with the EU Commission, with the World Business Council and the Capitals Coalition to develop natural capital accounting principles. And if you're looking at the latest communication of the EU talking about the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, this project is reflected and is explicitly mentioned around natural capital accounting, also around monetized impact measurement. And we are quite sure in the course of the discussions now within the Parliament and within the Council that this part will become a legislation in the future reporting exercises of companies. Also, since beginning of last year, we are working closely together with the OECD in a program which is called Business for Inclusive Growth. This is all about inclusive value chains. And here we are providing methodologies how you assess mainly the social and the human capital aspect of inclusive value chains globally. In September last year, we have been appointed as a member of the platform Sustainable Finance. Here we are working mainly in the area of the feasibility of the platform for the real economy. And we are leading the work stream around reporting and accounting, which is directly linked also to the reporting exercises and accounting frameworks. In the last year, we have piloted our first methodology, which I'm going to introduce, and Tommy will shed some insights from the more practical point of view, how this is helping SAP to move forward to integrate sustainability aspects into decision-making. And all methodologies we have piloted are published. You can access them via our internet, and we are being here as transparent as possible with regard to the methodologies. So within the VBA, we have 3 main areas of work. The first one is we want to develop and standardize methodologies how you measure sustainability performance. And this methodology has mainly 2 pillars. The first one is what you could call outside in. This is all about how you measure the enterprise value beyond your traditional financial assets. So this is tackling intangibles. This is tackling natural, social, and human capital aspects and how you integrate these parts more inclusively in your P&L and in your balance sheets. This part is also reflected in the Corporate Social Responsibility Directive, and the EU Commission is talking about the double materiality concept and especially about the outside-in view, including intangibles. The second pillar of the methodology we are running is also linked in the end to the CSRD, the Corporate Social Responsibility Directive. And this is all about measuring your impact as a company along the complete value chain. That means what is the value contribution of your business model to the wider economy, to society, and to the environment? And this is the part of the methodology which we have piloted, and Tommy also will provide insights over here from the SAP perspective. Piloting is one of the key USPs what we have within the VBA. Everything what we are developing as methodologies is piloted and tested directly within the companies to test the feasibility, to test the robustness of the methodologies, to understand the data requirements, and to understand the benefits applying these methodologies for management accounting. So we're talking directly about decision-making and steering your company. Due to the recent processes, what we have seen with regard to the standardization of reporting, talking about the Green Deal, talking about the taxonomy, talking about the CSRD, but also talking about the latest movements which you see within IFRS, setting up a sustainability standards board to standardize on a global level sustainability reporting. We see that data which we are collecting via our methodologies will for sure be used also in external reporting. So similar to financial accounting, most of the financial accounting data are used for internal management accounting, decision-making. Parts of this are used in the management report or management analysis. Same goes for sustainability data. This is another notion which was introduced by the EU Commission. We are not talking anymore about non-financial or pre-financial data. Now the term of sustainability information is introduced. So we are trying to keep pace with this one and now using sustainability information as the key term, which is also supported by organizations such as SASB, IRC, or the Impact Management Project. So these are the three key areas of work. And this here really is now getting a little bit more into the details with regard to the methodology we are running. As mentioned, it's reflecting the double materiality concept from the EU Commission. And just to introduce this, the double materiality concept, so inside out, outside in, or value to society, value to business, is also reflected by organizations such as IRC or SASB or the Impact Management Project. And what you can expect based on the latest discussions, what I had also with the IFRS Foundation, this double materiality concept will also be introduced via IFRS. Not in the first part of the development. Here, IFRS will focus on the enterprise value. In our wordings, the integrated account. But in a second step, also the IFRS will move in the direction of how do you measure impacts and how do you standardize impact measurement. So the value contribution to society. In a nutshell, the integrated account is with regard to your license to operate from a financial point of view. This is really about the extension of the enterprise value, mainly to provide information for the financial market players, for investors to assess the real value of your company. And the second part, the impact statement, is more, let's say, the societal license of your company. In the end, to understand in a black and white sense, is the value contribution of your company net positive or net negative across various indicators, including economic, social, and environmental aspects. So, as mentioned, we have piloted our first methodology in the area of the impact statement. This was last year, where the VBA consisted of 11 companies across 7 industries. The methodology is covering more than 180 indicators from economic, social, and environmental aspects. And we were running this assessment across the value chain, including the own operations and the upstream value chain of all of our companies. And it was covering, in the end, in the methodology, more than 219 countries and regions. So don't build on the country aspect. So for example, Taiwan is used as one country here. The methodology was piloted on 2 levels. The first one was to have a complete understanding and assessment of the corporate footprint, if you might say so the whole corporation. And the second part, or the second piloting aspect, was with regard to decision making. So looking into the details, if you're applying a methodology around impact measurement and valuation, how is this changing your decision making exercises? And this is showing you some results. what you see here in the end is that in our methodology, we are monetizing all environmental, social, and economic aspects. When we're talking about impact, the methodology has as the key performance yardstick, how is your business activity affecting the life and well-being of people? So this is really the inside-out view. What is happening due to your business activities in society, in nature around you, or in the wider economy? This is also the reason when you're talking about value drivers. So with regard to the economic value drivers, this is straightforward. These are positive impacts. When you're talking about the environmental indicators, using resources polluting the environment, this is negative. So here we're talking about costs to society. When we're talking about social and human indicators, it becomes a little bit more difficult. Because in our current accounting systems, when we're talking about traditional financial accounting, for example, taxes and wages are just a cost driver for business. That means, especially in a crisis as of today, our key ambition is to reduce costs, so reduce wages and taxes. If you take the inside out view, if you take the view of the impact of your company on society, taxes and wages are a positive value driver because we are creating purchase power. So think about what is happening if we as companies are fundamentally efficient. We are not paying taxes anymore, and we are replacing Tommy and myself with algorithms, so we are not paying wages anymore. Who in the end is buying the products of SAP? So we need to really think about what are the current incentive systems, what we have in the market economy, what is the impact of these incentive systems, and can we change these incentives? And we are talking here in the end about a reflection of the current challenges what we have in this huge transition of the economy into accounting systems. The EU Commission is phrasing this in the sense, how can we bring together the book value and the market value of companies? If you're thinking about the market value of Tesla compared to its book value, you have a huge gap. And we need to close this gap to provide the right information to our stakeholders, including the financial market, but also to drive companies in the right direction. And as the economic system is changing fundamentally, we need to think beyond just financial figures. And we need to think, what is the value contribution of a company to society? And this goes back also to the changing roles of companies in society. We are not anymore just private actors. We are working in the area of providing public goods. Talk about food, talk about water, talk about post deliveries, talk about public transportation. Most of this is currently provided by private companies. And this needs to be taken into account. So the insights with regard to the methodology here and the piloting is it's providing you a huge transparency along the value contribution of a company. It's reflecting in the end already the regulatory requirements, what we will face from the EU Commission, but also on the international level. In the end, this methodology enables you to directly compare non-financial and financial aspects because we are using in the end the same metric, talking about euro values. When we're talking about euro values, just take the greenhouse gas bar now. You might think about how is the methodology coming up with a euro value. And for all these exercises, just to remember you, this is all about the impact on the well-being of people. We are using total costs or willingness to pay concepts. That means in the area of greenhouse gases, we're talking about social costs of carbon. And within the VBA methodology, we're calculating a ton of CO2 with currently a little bit above 90 euros per ton. This 90 euros is in the end a total cost approach. We are using data from the UN organization at this point in time. And in the end, this is nothing else than a risk indicator for investors. Because at one point in time, this 90 euros will be internalized via a tax, via a trading system, by reputational issues, whatever, and will hit your financial balance sheet. And here you have already the link to concepts like the TCFD. So you can also use this methodology, what we are applying here, to serve the needs via frameworks as the TCFD. Sharing some insights with regard to the piloting. What we usually say is that we are creating here a huge data cube, which you can apply in totally different applications. One you see on the right-hand side, where you can easily come up with, let's call it country footprints. It demonstrates to you where in the world your business model creates the highest benefits or costs on a country level. You can also break this down on a business unit level. You can apply this methodology, for example, what you see on the left-hand side, for CapEx decisions. So make scenarios in different regions. If you're building up a new site, what are the benefits and the costs for society if you're building a site, in this case in Poland or in China? This is a real life example what you see over here. And the interesting thing is when you're talking about impacts, it makes a huge difference. For example, if you're building up a site in the middle of a rainforest or in the middle of an industrial area, or in the middle of a countryside or in the middle of a city, because the impacts are totally different depending on where you're building a new site. And this is reflected, for example, in this methodology by the valuation coefficients. So for example, the Poland case was on the countryside where the air pollution indicators of the site were by far lower compared to the China case, because the China case, the production plant was built up in the middle of a city. And the air pollution is affecting much more people, and therefore the valuation coefficient, so the monetary value, is much higher. So how does all of this fit together? The main ambition of the VBA is not to come up with any kind of reporting standards. Therefore, you have all of these other organizations, what you see here. And I introduced most of this to you. Our main ambition is to get the data right. So in really blunt words, bullshit in, bullshit out. We need to get the data right, and this is about accounting, to inform our stakeholders about the sustainability performance of a company. And when I say stakeholders, this is reflecting internal management, but also external stakeholders. If you're looking now at this movement, what we see with regard to the standardization of reporting, and you can expect that latest in 2 years, all of the companies most probably here in the call are requested to report around the CSRD and the taxonomy. So this will be mandatory disclosures. What we need to come up here with is pragmatic solutions for the real economy to deliver on these transparency needs. And this is what we are working for. This is why we're working in the accounting area. And this is why we're trying to bring, in the end, the right data to the right people and standardizing the measurement frameworks around sustainability aspects. Not sure how many of you have really read or had the chance to look at all of these disclosures from the EU Commission or following the processes at the IFRS level. My personal estimation is that the European Commission is now, in the end, first driving certain mandatory disclosure frameworks. It will be picked up by IFRS, and the IFRS process is fundamentally supported by the organizations you see on the right-hand side. So what you can expect over the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years to come is an international standardization framework around sustainability information, which will be similar to financial reporting. And we need to make ourselves prepared for this movement as real economy, because this will be a totally new level playing field. And this will be, in the end, also an essential point and influence with regard to your competitive edge. So get going, look into these regulatory frameworks, prepare yourself, and get moving. The work we are doing is highly reflected by these international organizations. So we are in standing contact with SASB, with IRC and others. In the end, to inform our methodology and align our methodologies also with regard to the upcoming reporting frameworks. And as mentioned before, we're working quite closely with the EU Commission, and for sure we, via my member companies also, are trying to inform the legislative process at the EU level in the end to ensure that we are here building on solutions which can be really implemented at the corporate level. I leave it here. Thanks for listening, and I'm now happy to take for a few minutes any kind of questions what you have before we're passing on to Tommy.
Thank you very much, Christian. We already received 2 questions in the Q&A, but I think you already responded to one, more or less. It was, there are many standard created sustainability report and like GRI or existing accounting standard that are integrating sustainable aspects, IFRS. How do you see this evolving? Will we see standard rules them all?
So just to reiterate, my personal conviction is that due to the huge support by international organizations, including IOSCO, the G7 and the G20, including the World Economic Forum, but also the standard setting organizations like the IRC or CESP, which are now merging into the Value Reporting Foundation, IFRS will set the new standard in the future. It's going to be a big question how the European legislation will fit into the international standard. There is a clear commitment by the EU Commission to build this up and to align with the international standard, but we will see if we're really executing this commitment, yes or no. From an international corporate perspective, and as you have seen, my corporates are all working on an international level. We are in fundamental support of the international solution, and therefore we are for sure also supporting this process at the IFRS level.
Thank you. Another very interesting question. It's does it value the contribution of the company to the SDGs?
So you don't see this right now, how it is linked to the SDG framework. This is something what we keep on the agenda for the work what we are doing. There are first consultancies who are matching these methodologies around impacts to the SDGs already. I'm in closer conversation with the UN Development Program. There are also programs running how you match, in the end, public accounting with private accounting methodologies, how this fits together and everything linked to the SDGs. We are not yet there with regard to really systematic approach, but it is on our agenda to link the both.
Thank you. And there is, so another question is how realistic is the 5 years time horizon? I think usually don't move that fast in the accounting world.
Yes, I know. Let's say when we're going back to Luca Pacioli, and I think he started his work about the double accounting frameworks in the 15th century. So it took the accounting world quite a long time until they have fundamentally came up with new ideas. When you're looking at the current speed, how especially the EU Commission is driving legislation in this direction. 5 years is not a long time horizon, but I'm quite sure in 5 years, we have fundamentally changed the reporting landscape, not just on the European level, also at the international level. And in the end, this movement started more or less 20 years ago with the establishment of the UN Global Compact. This was all about, let's say, awareness raising. And when we have seen the first reporting frameworks like GRI coming up, but if the real economy is honest with themselves, this is just about reporting, and this has not fundamentally changed the business models what we are running. And this is now taking place due to external pressure via policymakers, regulators, and society. But there's also the understanding within the companies that we need to change if we want, in the end, to deliver long-term value. So 5 years is ambitious, but I'm quite sure that we have a major change in 5 years.
Another question for you, Christian, is ecological economics studies have showed impact on ecosystem are multiple time global GDP, yet the VBA method seems to imply that environmental impacts are a tiny fraction of the economic value. How can we explain this?
So take two things into account. First of all, everything what we're currently doing here is in the end a journey to have a complete and comprehensive methodology in place. I introduced to you that the current methodology of the VBA is covering own operations and the upstream value chain. And the most impacts what we see with regard to our products and services are in the end happening downstream, so at the user level and at the end use level. This is currently not captured. And what I can tell you based on experiences, what I made when I was building up this methodology for my home company, which is BASF, and Tommy can most probably share this view directly. It's a really, really intense undertaking if you want to collect data with regard to your downstream activities. So think about the SAP softwares, in what kind of applications we are taking place, how do you want here to calculate the impacts? If you're thinking about a chemical company like BASF having more than 60,000 products in the portfolio, how should you in the end calculate all of these impacts? So we are working on this one, but this will take quite some time. Secondly, when we are looking at the environmental indicators which we're currently covering, we have land use in, but biodiversity not in specific. And biodiversity for sure has a major impact, but here also it's really difficult to collect the data and to understand the impact of business models. In this area, we are working closely also with the EU Commission. There's a project ongoing which is called Align, driven by the DG Environment, and we are in close connection in the end to build on their outcomes and to integrate this methodology also in this transparent project, which is about natural capital accounting.
Thank you, Christian. I don't know if there is more question. I think yes. Can we somewhere check the indicators you are currently piloting?
Yes, you can. First of all, as I said, we have disclosed all our methodologies. Secondly, yes, we will share this presentation. Thirdly, I think in 2 weeks' time, we will disclose the piloting results and the key learnings from the VBA from the first piloting phase. So watch out, in 2 weeks' time, you receive much more information around the piloting, and you don't need to read all of the methodology papers. Nevertheless, I would encourage you to do so.
Yeah, and Christian, I invite you to send me also the info so I can share to all members. If there are no further questions, I will invite Thomas to speak about its own experience.
Thank you so much for having this opportunity, and hello to everybody on the call. I'm Thomas from SAP. I'm seconded to the Value Balancing Alliance since the co-foundation in 2019. And I have the honor to, on the one hand, organize the piloting within SAP of the methodologies Christian just talked about, and on the other hand, to contribute within the Value Balancing Alliance to the development of methodologies and to prepare that so that the member companies can ultimately test these methodologies. So my background is on the one hand in human resources. I was 15 years in different roles in human resources. On the other hand, on global sustainability in all areas, but with the strongest background on the social side of the sustainability house. My real strong belief, and also what drives me, is the conviction that every business, so also of course SAP, but every business has to do its operations within the planetary boundaries and above the social foundation based on the Stockholm Resilience Model. I'm sure you all are aware and know this. And I mean it word by word. So when you take a business decision, a single business decision, it should be in the future built on the fact, on the data, on the insights, but also on the consequences that the business you're in over the complete value chain respects the impact on environment and society, so that ultimately we do operate in the future, and I mean every business, for every business decision, in every business case, that we stay within these planetary boundaries and above the social foundation. Having said this, as this is the driver and the core belief we should test within the Value Balancing Alliance, within SAP, when we do something, is what we are doing designed that it helps us to get one step closer to this desired belief, conviction, or desired end state. And for sure, we're not perfect. For sure, we're even not halfway there. But what we believe, what I believe, is that we took the right steps into the right direction in order to ultimately get there. Having said this, SAP has a journey of 10 years behind from pure financial reporting to integrated reporting. Within this journey on to integrated reporting, really evolving from purely disclosure to integrate. At that point of time, Christian, we called it still pre-financial information, integrate into business decision, and to inform management that we do have, when we talk about business cases, a complete and integrated view and not only a pure financial view. Are we already there, even after a journey of 10 years? Not 100%, but I would say we have taken major steps, and we have the majority of the board and the majority of executive management behind these thinking. And in the last 2 years, as Christian perfectly laid out, this accelerated dramatically, because not only from our intrinsic motivation, but also from all stakeholder sides around us, this is being a really not only a strong request, but it's becoming mandatory, especially from the customer side. Right. When you asked me what were the things that that were important in order to be successful on our journey to impact measurement and valuation, and to really integrate that into decision making, I would call out 3 major things. One might be obvious, but not all companies are there to my best knowledge. You have to convince your CEO and your CFO, or these 2 guys already have to be convinced when you start the journey. So it's you can't be successful when your CFO is not a believer of that and does not support this journey. The same for the CEO. Otherwise, you will not become a part of the core business. You will be not inside the mechanics where you really can change the game of business decision and holistic reporting. So that's the first thing, convince the CEO and the CFO. The second thing is, below that level, you must have all guys of the stakeholder groups that are accountable in your organization as well on this journey on board. So especially the controlling guys, so the chief controller of the company, as he or she is the one ultimately who has to deliver the figures that are needed and has to be part of the development of the mechanics, how to get the sustainability data points that are needed in order to build that up. The second is the chief accountant of a company. So the one who is accountable for disclosure and for reporting things, that he or she is really on board when we talk about changing the way how we organize to bring that to the external world. And thirdly, and very important as well, the chief of investor relations, as he's the counterpart to the investor and financial community of your business. And he or she has to be convinced that this is not only a side discussion, but a discussion in the middle where it really influences the shareholder price, shareholder value, and the share price as well. So having these guys on board is the first step. The second important step is when we talk about the needed data. that sounds very simple when you say, well, you simply have to collect the CO2 emission data within your own operations, but it's not. There are multiple ways, there are multiple hurdles, and you must be aware that this is a major undertake to get the data side of the house right, so that you can really do this impact measurement and valuation journey. That was for own operations, but you have to do the same for upstream based on your spent data. And as Christian laid out, you have to do the same for your downstream perspective, where it is even harder to get the data side right and to define what kind of interaction points and data collection points are necessary to ultimately do that. And the third thing then is, after having solved the first two challenges, or underway to solve these first two challenges, is that you're not alone starting this, but that you have a kind of peer network where you can really learn and evolve and exchange best practices, dealing with problems, ultimately help each other out, because there is no handbook out there which you can simply take and say, use this, and then you will be perfectly there. We are still on a learning journey, and that's, at least from our point of view, SAP's point of view, one of the biggest assets the Value Balancing Alliance offered to us, the peer learning of between the member companies from the different view angles and the challenges we have to overcome. Having said this, and then I will already close and open for questions. For the first piloting phase, we really got valuable insights, and I pick out two. One is on the upstream side, so everything based on our spent data in 160 countries and multiple buying sectors. We were very surprised that the biggest negative impact was for the indicator occupational health and safety. We did not expect that. So there we had over 300 million of negative contribution, and that led us to the decision point that we of course now concentrate on this particular topic, and we go deeper in our analysis, and we go now into deeper discussion with our tier 1 suppliers. We go into deeper discussion with our own procurement department, how we can, starting from that baseline figure to targets that make sense to us, and to reduce this. So this was one piloting result, and the second was from a decision-making point of view. We were very surprised, when we put in this social cost of carbon, as Christian mentioned, as valuation factor, that real business case decisions, one dealing with a new data center, where SAP is one of the owner, and the other one for our internal CO2 flight prices, which we internally calculate for decision-making purposes, how this changed the outcome and the results of these business decisions. So that was really, really valuable. And we're looking very much forward that these valuation coefficients and calculation methods ultimately, or part of it at least, will be picked up by the standard setting organizations, as Christian said. Because one thing is sure, as a global company, what we do want to avoid is that we have in one country these standards, and in the other country that kind of standard set. So that's why we engage as SAP also in the Value Balancing Alliance towards one common set of standards, and that we support the movement that Christian laid out. Having said this, happy to answer questions. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. I don't know if there is question for Thomas. We receive another question for Christian, but I would like first to give the opportunity to the participant to ask Thomas question about a concrete implementation or his experience. No question.
Maybe just to complement what Tommy said, he was referring now to the SAP experience. What I can share is for all member companies, it's of really high value to really discuss, as Tommy said, this with peer groups to really understand how this is affecting in the end your decision-making models. Secondly, I think what is rather interesting with regard to the changes within the companies. When we have kicked off the VBA back in June 2019, the main contact person within the companies was usually the sustainability department. This has fundamentally shifted. Now the main contact is within the CFO and corporate finance and controlling department, and accompanied by the sustainability department to get the broader picture in. So there's a fundamental shift, which is in the end reflecting also the movement towards regulation. Last but not least, all member companies have provided the feedback also for those who have done these calculations for the first time, that it can be done really with reasonable efforts within the company to get all of these calculations done, and also in a reasonable time frame. So for all of them, it didn't take longer than 3 months from the first, let's say, approaching your stakeholders within the company up to having the results in your hands and to start to discuss and interpret the results.
Thank you. There is one question for Thomas, and Wayne, we will come back to your question afterwards. But first, the question for Thomas. In the example of SAP data center, what were the major impact categories which influenced the business decision in an unexpected way?
So there were two pillars, one obvious one and one non-obvious one. The obvious one is energy consumption. So as this is the main driver for CO2 emission, beside the cooling piece of a data center. So having a much higher price in here did reinforce the calculation cycle. And the second one is respecting the fundamental, I would say, human rights and all aspects of the social implications, as this will be a mandatory requirement in the future, and to show that this could also be calculated within a business case was a major eye opener for the ones who are dealing with this business decision. So at all, it's not even putting the concrete figure behind it, but showing the magnitude of the impact, because this would be simply integrated into the business decision process, started this thought-changing process.
Another very interesting question from Annalise. What were the main challenges in a company when you wanted to monetize social environment impacts? Were there any objection from internal stakeholders?
To me, yeah.
Yes.
Sure. I talked about a journey of 10 years and 2 years since 2019 for impact valuation with value balancing alliance, and especially from the accounting side of the house, the traditional hardcore guys of financial figures. You have to convince them with every line item. What is the methodology? What is the statistical background? Are you sure about your boundary restrictions? Why did you take that and not that one? So they really wanted to be involved when they accepted that it will come, to know the details. So that was one group we had to convince more from the mathematical and methodology side of the house. And the second piece that we really still on our way to convince, is the investor relation side of the house of SAP, as their experience over the last 20 years was, when they are in one room with hardcore investors, that they were only asked for financial figures and not for sustainability figures. Even as Christian laid out, that changed dramatically in the last 12 to 18 months, it's still the beginning of the journey. So their experience just started that they are asked for these kind of figures. So to integrate the investor relations side of the house into this process is perhaps one of the things that we even started late in the process, but it's very important.
Thank you. We have a question from Anne. I don't know for whom is it. Do you believe that all sustainability data should be responsibly of the financial controlling department in the long run? Who wants to respond to
Tommy?
Yeah, maybe perhaps the more narrow view from SAP, and then you can open it, Christian, from the standard setting and legislation side of the house. I'm even not sure if I could answer this question as it is asked, because I do not know if the term financial controlling department will be the same in the future. So as things are really coming together within SAP, so not only since the beginning of sustainable finance taxonomy, but the financial controller, when I would use this term, they understood that they must have also, they must be involved in all other aspects of gathering data and figures of the company. It's not a sustainability topic anymore. It's a topic of the complete company. And now it's more the question of we have to figure out internally which department does what, how do we exchange information. It's no more the question, we will have to collect these kind of data. That's true, there we can do a check. But who is accountable for that, that will have to be sorted out in the future. So that's the long answer to the short question. I do think financial controller maybe is not the right job description for the future anymore.
I would expect, just building and supporting Tommy's view, if you're looking at the companies right now, at least all who are providing a sustainability report, there's already a controlling community in place, which is consisting of HR controllers, EHS controllers, financial controllers, whomever. I'm quite sure that there will be IT systems in place in the future which are collecting all of these data at a central point. And then you have, let's say, a collection of competencies in a team to really understand and interpret the data. And therefore, I would also say, yes, there will be financial controllers in place, but there will be controllers in place who need to come up with a much broader view, because you need to understand how these data are interrelated and how they impact each other. And this is where the, let's say, key controller function in the future might be. Yeah? It's much more strategic and interrelated.
Thank you. We still have 6 minutes and 3 interesting questions, so let's try to cover them. So maybe for you, Christian, how close does the current VBA method come to capturing the economy, including planetary boundary and social foundation?
Yeah, Wayne, this is one of the most interesting questions with regard to the methodology development in the future, because what we are currently doing is similar to the SDGs. For sure, we are building up with regard to the content also on Kate's model, but also on the planetary boundaries and social foundations. But what we're currently doing, we don't have, let's say, an objective baseline in what is good and what is bad with regard to sustainability performance. And in, let's say, step 2 or 3 of the methodology development, if you're really looking at the mid or longer term, we need to establish these baselines to really understand what business model in the end is providing overall a positive contribution or negative contribution. So in the end, the taxonomy is starting these things with regard to a classification system, but we need to evolve this over time. But first and foremost, for us, we need to get the data right, and we need to set the methodologies now for the accounting area. And also one of the experiences we can share is, I was surprised with regard to the feedback of my member companies, how they evaluate the robustness of data as of today. And here we definitely need to improve tremendously, not just in the environmental area, also in the social and human area.
And there is another question, but for Thomas from Wayne. To reach the global standardization you refer to, do you anticipate the VBA accounting will need to be legislated?
The short answer is no. So what I and Christian, you might build on that. What I do see is, we are on the one hand practitioners lab, on the other hand, we are influencing with what we believe is feasible and practicable for businesses to offer that and to cooperate with standard setting organizations and with legislation bodies like the EU Commission to offer and to influence in a way for methods and standards that we think could help business and ultimately also keep us in the planetary boundaries and above the social foundation. But it's not that we think what we are doing should be put into legislation. That would not be my ambition.
So I would fully build on what Tommy just said. Yes, there needs to be regulation and legislation in place for, let's say, external disclosures. This needs to be mandatory, and there needs to be a standardized framework in place, be it via IFRS or be it via legislative solutions within the EU Commission. When we're talking about the accounting system in specific, there does not need to be legislation in place, and there shouldn't be legislation in place because the accounting system should be shaped and tailored around the business needs of a company. But for sure, some of this part or some of the data we are coming up with should be used in the external reporting. Therefore, also the CSRD is putting quite some emphasis on the whole assurance part with regard to data. And this is definitely what we need to get right, third-party verification and assurance. And I think this is also one of the assets what we have within the VBA, having all of the big four auditing firms in who directly look into the assurability and verification, not just of the processes, also on the data we are using on the databases. I think this is quite an asset how to move forward.
Thank you. And the last question, how do you quantify, so in euro, the financial related to human rights?
So that's maybe a question to me, right?
You kick it off.
Yeah, so that's currently under development. Not able to put that into 4 sentences, but built on the good work, for example, of Valuing Nature and other research institutions that have methods in place to, on the one hand, clearly describe the indicator, and the other hand, what kind of data do we have? Third piece is what kind of statistical databases do we have per country, and in some cases per sector, to quantify this, and then from this putting together and then testing it what is the most feasible way. That's the process that is currently underway.
So just to complement, yes, for sure, some human rights aspects we are already covering when we're talking about wages, when we are talking about health and safety. This is tackling human rights. Here we are using in the end same methodologies like total cost concepts and in the end willingness to pay concepts. What we definitely need to do, especially in the sensitive area of human rights, to build in the end on existing and credible data sets what are already out there. They are sometimes provided by the OECD, by multi-stakeholder forums, whatever, and we shouldn't come up with valuation coefficients in this direction as VBA. And this is what we are not doing at all to the extent what we can do where data are already available. As Tommy said, we are a practitioners lab. We just want to, in the end, develop solutions from business for business to be as pragmatic as possible to meet the transparency requirements, which are now coming from regulation, but also, and this is the main focus of our work, to inform our decision makers within the company with solid, robust, comprehensive data, just to make better decisions for the future.
Thank you very much. If there are no further questions, then I would like to conclude with saying thank you for your participation and your interest in valuing non-financial impact value. I would like to say an enormous thanks to Christian and Thomas for their insights today. They were very enlightening and clear and inspiring, I think so. And you see in the chat already very good feedback. So thank you very much. And thanks to all the participants for your interest and question. And I wish you a great afternoon. I will send the recording and the presentation in the comments day. Thank you very much.
Thanks.